Hello and welcome. Today's speed paint is going to be of a cute dog just enjoying a day at the beach. If you're interested in purchasing this print, I'll leave a link in my description to my in-print shop down below. This speed paint will be a bit of a chatty one. I'll be talking about my art college experience versus recently taking online courses made by artists in the industry, and I'll be sharing my thoughts on the two. So if you're curious about art college, want to know more about me, or are just here for a cute dog drawing, stay tuned. Why did I go to art school? Is art school worth it versus online courses? While I can't speak for everyone, I'm just going to share my personal experiences. There were definitely pros in my opinion to going as far as skills that I still use to this day. Absolutely amazing teachers and wonderful memories, but there were definitely downsides that we'll talk about in this video. Again, I'm just sharing my personal experiences to give you some insight if you're maybe a senior in high school and you're trying to figure out what your next step is, or maybe you're later in life and thinking about a career change. For a bit of backstory on me, I'm Alexis. If you're new here, welcome. I'm a children's book illustrator and a freelance artist. I graduated with a bachelor's in media arts and animation back in 2019. Now, while we get into this video, I won't mention any school names specifically, mainly because I'm a bit unsure if I'd get in trouble legal-wise. So I'll be giving a broad idea of what art school was for me, and then also recently I've been doing some online courses as well to continue my education, because it's important to always be learning and growing. So I'll be able to give you an insight comparison between the two. So let's start off with art college. Starting with the top reason why you may want to go to an art school is getting a degree, obviously. I started college in 2016. When I graduated high school, I really thought I wanted to be an animator and work at one of the big studios like Disney, Pixar, or DreamWorks. Unless you're going to work for yourself, a lot of places like those bigger companies where they offer benefits, insurance, and things usually want you to have some sort of degree. Now, you may not agree with that, but that's usually just the world we live in. To start off with the pros, I will say I did learn a lot about the fundamentals of color theory and composition, among many other skills. A lot of that I still refer back to even today. These teachers were amazing at that, very well versed in their skills and very invested in their students, which could have been very, very difficult for them because, again, at my school particularly, I don't know about all of them, but they were also supposed to be professionals in the industry with a job either currently or very recently had a job in the field. So I couldn't imagine their workload between teaching, work, and home life. So all props to them. The other thing you get out of going to art school is the community and making new friends and connections. That was probably my favorite part of going to art school, was meeting other people like me, creative people. I will say I was very shy and it took me quite a while to build those connections, both in friendships and learning about the industry with the local studios in my area. Later in school, I did get to tour some of the studios and meet the people that actually worked there, which really helped me build confidence in a possible job after I graduated, because that's how a lot of people get their foot in the door, is by knowing someone in the industry they could recommend you for an opening position. The other thing when it comes to forming connections with fellow students is you can create projects together that you can share on each other's portfolios. A lot of the classes that I would have basically the same projects over and over and over again, so a lot of the portfolio pieces would get recycled, and that's kind of a con when you're looking at applying to jobs, because a lot of studios can see basically those recycled projects from schools, and you definitely want to get creative and kind of either make your own portfolio project or kind of branch away from just what you see in the classroom, and that kind of makes you stand out a little bit more too. Now, with the school that I went to particularly, I started going because I wanted to learn more about animation. While school helps students learn more about other fields that they may not even know are out there, like for me, I didn't know much about storyboarding before I started college and actually really enjoyed those classes. On the other hand, I had to do a lot of 3D modeling classes, and I didn't enjoy any of them. That's probably the main downside, I would say, when comparing to online courses. The thing with school, you don't get to pick your classes. The curriculum is already set in stone, and in order to get that degree that you're looking for, you can't stray from the path that they've already laid out. So the path isn't quite as flexible when it comes to experimenting. I'd have to basically change my entire major just to learn one thing about graphic design. I'll talk more about online courses in a minute, but for school, I wouldn't say having those classes already laid out is necessarily a bad thing. It just depends on what your needs are and what you're looking to get out of it. For me at that time in my life, I would agree that school helped me in a way that I don't think I would have succeeded in doing so on my own. I was very used to having some sort of structure and a teacher I could get feedback from one-on-one, and honestly, having an assignment to work towards for a good grade did help push me. It gave me direction. Now, getting more specifically into the cons of art schools, as you may notice, I don't have as many pros. First, you'll have some ridiculous classes and fees you can't waive off. For my school, they did have a math class, for example. Like, why in art would you need a math class beyond what you took in high school? Also, for every single course I took, they always had some sort of textbook that I had to buy. Yet, throughout the entire course, we would never open it. I tried after a few terms of seeing this if I could just waive that off for my courses, and they flat out said no. I had to pay an extra $50 or more for something I never used. Like, why? Like, the school system just feels in a way like they're just trying to squeeze out every last dime from you. When I applied to the school, they told me when I started my first year that when my senior year came, I would get to do what's called a portfolio showcase. This mainly was when all the graduating seniors on their last term would be able to show off their entire portfolio with their classmates to a large group of people in the industry. Now, this is huge. If you're not used to anything art-wise, having your portfolio is basically the same thing as a resume. Now, when it comes to the portfolio showcase, think of this as a big convention where professionals get to meet the new upcoming artists. The graduates will have their own booth, essentially, displaying all their work. Depending on if they're an animator, they would show a reel, or if they're a 3D modeler, they could have a slideshow showing all their work. Part of the school even had a culinary section, so some of the tables would have dishes that the student created for people to see and taste, possibly. I always liked those tables because they had awesome cupcakes. It was really cool and very important for the graduates to get to meet people from the local studios. Sometimes graduates would get offers of upcoming positions, or they would get really good feedback of how to improve their portfolio. But what's important here is the face-to-face interaction. If you can make a really good first impression with that professional, it could make it easier for you to get your foot in the door when applying for an opening position at their company. Now, to be honest, it doesn't always happen like that. You're not guaranteed a job after you graduate or even during the showcase. In my case, come my third year, there were rumors that the school was having financial issues and there might be staff cuts, but again, these were just rumors. I didn't pay much attention to it. I had 5 classes I was juggling at the time, and I was also trying to get an internship started, which I actually got accepted into the Disney College program. That'll be a whole other video, so I won't talk much about that, but just for context, I left the school for about 7 months to complete my internship there down in Florida. I did get college credit for going, so that's awesome. When I got back, immediately the school announces that they're closing. Like, no joke, like I have 3 months to either finish my degree, transfer, or be forced to drop out. A lot of my fellow classmates and friends were maybe 2 terms away from graduating, so a large majority of students took on extra classes to graduate within those 3 months. Some of them taking 18 or even over 20 credits in order to cram in time. The teachers did everything they could to help their students. It was absolute chaos for those 3 months. I, on the other hand, still had roughly a year left to go. There was no way I was going to be able to cram, and I definitely didn't work this hard to drop out. So my only option was to transfer. Now, with some art schools, because the curriculum is so specific to art or whatever major you're focusing on, the credits don't always transfer to every school or even at all, depending on, again, what degree you get, because they're so specialized. Luckily, this school had other branches, I guess you could call them. But I had also heard that those other branches along my neighboring states were also closing within the next couple months, if not sooner, which forced me to have to move halfway across the country just to go to another branch in order to finish my degree. So to summarize, I had 3 months to finish the current classes I was already taking, to transfer all of my school info to another school. I had to find a place to live and move before the next term started, which only gave me about a week in between terms to get there. Not to mention, I had to leave all my friends behind and start basically all over when it came to connections to studios because I wouldn't be in that local area when I graduated. Now, you could obviously say I could just move back after I graduated, but moving is pretty expensive. And the new area did have a lot of animation studios, so I figured maybe a year would be enough time to build some connections, and hopefully it wouldn't be so bad. After all this happened, I was taking a few steps back to figure out what I wanted to do. I didn't really feel the push to animate anymore. I did enjoy doing it, but not really as a career anymore. I really enjoyed the digital art side, like visual development or character designs, and for the last term I was there, the school actually offered one children's book course, which if you remember what current job I do now, you'll see that come back into play later. But I didn't really get to explore those further other than maybe 1 or 2 classes out of the 3 years I attended before the school shut down. The other thing that the previous school had in place was that in your senior year, you could get to do a one-on-one class where you were assigned a teacher of your choice, and for that term, they would work with you one-on-one to perfect your portfolio. There was one teacher, again, I'm not going to say names or anything, but let's just call this teacher Jessica. Jessica was absolutely amazing. She, in my opinion, was one of the best teachers there at that school. She would specialize in character design, animation, visual development, and I really wanted to have her for my one-on-one class during my senior year, but obviously I didn't get that opportunity. Now, here's the kicker though. When I got to that new branch, they didn't even have any animation classes for me to finish my degree. They had me take another figure drawing course when I already had 3 from my previous college and labeled that as my animation class. They didn't even have an animation teacher at that school. While there were some not so good teachers, I did have one amazing teacher there that actually introduced me to a local director, and that's actually how I got my first freelancing job. More on that in just a moment. Now, when it comes to art school specifically, I would put that as another con because you don't really know what kind of teachers you're going to get when signing up for a class, good or bad. When graduation came though, again, the school is a branch of the other school I was at, meaning they're supposed to have the same structure of how they run the school and all that kind of stuff. Now, remember what I said about portfolio showcases? It was me and one other student graduating, and I remember I had my portfolio website put together that I did entirely by myself. I didn't even get a one-on-one session with any teachers. So me and the other student were to pitch our portfolio to basically an empty classroom except for 2 teachers and the head director of our major. That was it. Now, I can understand if there were only 2 people graduating that term, maybe it makes sense to not do a big showcase. Now, the teachers did give really good feedback for me to help improve my portfolio after I graduate to better improve my chances of getting a job. I'm not hating on the teachers or anything for that. It's just by comparison, I also remember being at my friends' showcases before I left my previous school, and I remember, even though it was a bit chaotic, it was fun being in that big space with all kinds of fellow classmates and family members and professionals all intermingling together. I had that built up, I guess, in my mind for what to expect from my graduation, and I just felt, I guess, disappointed. I don't know, either at myself or the school. Either way, it was just a little different than I expected it to be. After I graduated, like I mentioned, I had my first freelancing job with local director thanks to an awesome teacher from that school. I had that job for a little bit, and then I would try to apply for other local studios in the area, but not really having much luck. Which, hindsight 2020, totally makes sense because looking at my portfolio then, it was a complete hodgepodge mess of everything from 3D modeling, digital art, and the little bit of animation I had left from my previous school. Now, if you're looking for some tips on how to build a portfolio in a website, I will do a future video on that. Sometime later, I met my now-to-be husband. At the time, he was really into art on the side, but he wasn't going to school for it. He introduced me to a lot of art podcasts and some amazing online art courses, one being specifically on children's books. We both were really into creating our own stories, so for fun, we decided to give it a try. He would write out a children's book and I would illustrate, obviously. And things just sort of exploded from there. I decided to scrap everything in my portfolio and start completely over. One thing I will add here, just because you graduate from an art school doesn't necessarily mean you won't ever have to redo or update your portfolio. I actually highly recommend after you graduate that you should be replacing pieces of your portfolio or your work about every 6 months to a year or so. Hopefully, you're continuing to learn and grow and gain more life experience, even if you aren't working for a studio yet. You can make your own projects, like what my husband and I did. We just one day decided to make a children's book. No one was paying us. We just did that on our own time. And it actually really helped my portfolio because it was a whole new project. It was personable, and I started and finished it all together. So you can actually show a completely finished project, which a lot of studios actually want to see that. Now, switching to the other topic of online courses, whether they're made by artists in the industry or pre-recorded courses that you can start and finish on your own time, they're a little more flexible like that. Here are some of the pros and cons. Cons that I would say for online courses is you need to be very self-disciplined. You need to feel very comfortable of giving yourself projects to work on because there's no teacher or a grade or even the cost of a degree to keep you accountable. This also ties into having good management skills for those same reasons. You're basically creating that curriculum by yourself to help get you from point A to point B, whatever that may look like for you. If you're trying to apply to a studio or if you just want to open up your own online shop, you get basically what you put in. Another con to online courses that I would hope is getting better in our current society, especially after COVID, is that you might have to fight a little bit harder for a position at a studio because you don't have a degree to back up your skills. A lot of job positions usually ask people to have some sort of degree or a certain number of years working in the industry. On the flip side, for some pros to online courses are obviously it's less cost effective. You don't have to shell out thousands of dollars to learn about animation or graphic design or even learning how to make a children's book and so many other topics. The subjects are definitely broader and more flexible for you to explore than a typical college route. Even now, there are more online courses out there available than there were 5 years ago, and that list will continue to grow in the future. Another thing to add to that is if you're wanting to be a freelancer, instead of working for a studio, I would highly recommend that you take some sort of business course. My art school didn't really have a particular class that covered that side of things. At least my college, the system was more pushing you to work towards studios. I did have this one other teacher from my first school, bless his heart, he actually typed out himself on his own time multiple PDFs and videos of tips to his students if they were interested in doing some sort of freelance that covered a broad scope of contracts, how to work with clients, and many other topics too, that I actually still have saved on my computer. So if you're thinking of going into your own business, or even if you're looking at just working for a studio, I do recommend you check out some sort of business course for artists specifically to both protect yourself from bad studios trying to take advantage of you, or maybe later in life you decide to open up your own shop. So to summarize all of this, I will say in my point of life now, I do enjoy online courses more. That saying, I do have experience under my belt of working for some freelance jobs that I have a better understanding of what I need from a course and what my focus is when it comes to my art. I know I enjoy making children's books and running my own business, and I want to lean more into that. For me personally, back in 2016, I felt that I needed to go through school first in order to get to where I am today, even if things didn't go smoothly. If I had a time machine and knowing what I know now, maybe I would have done things differently, I don't know. But whichever you decide, one cool thing about art is everyone has a different path. There's no one way to succeed. I still have skills I got out of my school experience, and there are skills I still got out of my online courses too. Not that I'll be eager to jump back into college anytime soon. For where I'm at currently with my career and my financial situation, I think I'm going to stick to the online courses. It's all about weighing the pros and cons and what you're looking to get out of it. That's about it for this video. Thank you for listening to me rant a little bit, but mainly I hope you enjoyed learning a bit about my history and that it gave you some insight if you're leaning towards either going to a school for a degree or just taking online courses. I don't want to dissuade anyone from going to art school if you really want to. If that's what you want to do, go for it. I honestly do think with today's resources available, I would have to recommend anyone starting now. I would lean more towards online courses, but again, you have to know yourself of what you think you can and can't manage and what your end goal is. These are all just my experiences and opinions. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are when it comes to art colleges or online courses. Leave them down below if you enjoyed, and please subscribe and like this video. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!